This is again why I say, like, the people that are in recovery I like more than anybody because they're introspective. So I just started this deep personal journey about, like, what is it that I want? What do I want to be? What is possible? What is this all about? All this kind of stuff. And so, although I remember my oldest brother thinking, like, what did you quit? You quit drinking? What, you can't even have a glass of wine? I was like, yeah, man, like, I don't drink. I'm not a drinker.
This is the Knockin' Doors Down podcast. If you're looking to hear stories of hope, inspiration, and turning your greatest adversities into your advantage, well, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Jason LaChance, and through my addiction recovery and struggles with anxiety and depression, I dug into my passion of speaking with people who have transformed their lives. And Rob Hannley, publisher and editor-in-chief of Recovery Today magazine, thanks for joining me on Knockin' Doors Down.
Sure, man. I'm happy to. I'm happy to. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh yeah, we were talking before we hit recording, and I wanted to share this with people because they'll hear me say it often is, follow the people that have what you want. And that's not a nefarious thing. And Rob's one of those people that I followed. And so it's cool to finally sit down and talk with you. And I just love your work. And of course, we'll have the links in the description here so people can get subscribed to Recovery Today magazine. It's a must. I mean, just the principles of it, those not yet in addiction recovery, those in recovery, and those who got sober long ago. And I mean, it's just the work in there and the amount of people you work with is phenomenal. And we'll talk about that in a bit, but 3 things you're grateful for today.
Oh, wow, man. Well, funny thing is, it's not a hard one. I was saving a little bit of, I have to put a label on myself. I'm ADD. I don't like labels, so I'll say I have what people would say, oh yeah, that's kind of. So one of them is I Googled once upon a time, why do I overshare? Because I seem to tell everybody freaking everything. And then it said it's a characteristic of ADD. And I was like, holy shit, like really? Okay, well, so saving the transparency, there was something that happened about a year or so ago with my wife. And I thought she died, actually. Oh. And it wasn't an overdose, had nothing to do with drugs. My wife's actually never even smoked a cigarette, as a matter of fact, in her life. And anyhow, it was something very bad. So from that day on, after we cleared that, very scary episode, I have a reminder that says, what are you grateful for? So the very first thing that I think of when you say that is, my answer to that has always been, I'm very grateful to my wife, that my wife is, in great health and alive and everything and stuff like that. So that's the first thing. Secondly, I am very grateful for Recovery Today. And I am very grateful for, the opportunity that I've had with it to meet interesting people and have interesting conversations, this being one of them. And then I'm grateful also, just honestly, to be alive myself, to have like this experience today, and that I'm very intentional about kind of being a work in progress. And I don't know, man, that I can kind of be better than I was today. I can be better, hopefully, in some way that I was yesterday. And just for this whole experience, I don't know, I probably should think of something else too, but it's like painful because it sounds kind of fluffy and bullshitish, but like that's the truth,
Well, don't you find though that when you like those that really work recovery, and we can distinguish a difference with people, but then when you really do and you are authentic, some of the shit might come across like fluffy, but it's not, because you just genuinely can embrace things that we never did before when we were using.
Yeah. And so it's what I call the hard left turn. I probably read it somewhere. Sometimes I tend to think that I came up with things, but I'm sure I stole that from somebody. But it's like you're driving you're going along, recklessly driving, and then you hit a brick wall, and it's like, whoa, like what happened? And then you can't go on any further or whatever. And so then you have this period where you have to take a hard left turn. The road ended, right? And so I wrote about this in the magazine's letter from the editor, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago. And I said, people in recovery are the best people I know. Because I was really thinking about it. And I was like, man, I like people in recovery better than anybody. Because especially if you've had more years, going, and you're actually working things, you're deep and introspective. I tend to think that people that are in recovery, and maybe those that are not, that need to be in recovery, they're not yet, I think maybe we feel things deeper and we're more sensitive, that there's some kind of higher calling within you that's you're trying to express some kind of way. And so now when you hit this wall and you have to go, shit, man, like, how did this happen? And maybe you can go back to trauma, or you can go to this, that, and the other, but it's all about what your perspective is, and or what, maybe it's like what your job was. So here's a great example. One of my friends I just adore, he's in our magazine every single month, and because he makes the magazine look beautiful. And his name is Michael Blanchard. Shout out to Michael Blanchard of Blanchard MV Studio. MV is Martha's Vineyard. Okay, so he lives in this gorgeous place. And his story was, he was the chief operating officer of a healthcare company. Don't know what it was, but it's not like a mom and pop if you got a COO, I don't think. And he was, as I recall, he's an alcoholic, and maybe he was paying pills. He had a big fat house, mansion, and family, and all the kind of shit. So he's got a steamable job, he's making bank, all the trappings of everything. But then he has this problem, right, that's going on. And invariably it came crashing down, and he lost everything, fired, and house, divorce, all of it. Okay. So he's like picking up the pieces, rehab or something after, and a therapist person, and he was struggling also with depression too, coexisting. And somebody said to him, or he read or something like that, some kind of obscure thing like, taking pictures is actually very good for depression. So he was like, wow, I had photography class in high school. Sure, maybe I'll go take some pictures. Well, he does live in a gorgeous area. Martha's Vineyard is gorgeous all around there.
Yeah, no shit.
And the dude is like the freaking Ansel Adams. If you don't know, Ansel Adams, one of the most famous landscape photographers ever. The guy's stuff is just sensational. And so the first time we featured him, I interviewed him, and then we added all these pictures, and it was like, holy shit, man. Like, he just jumps off the page. And then he's got this great mind and stuff like that. So anyhow, I love Michael. And ever since then, I was like, I just want to have you in every issue, because I just want to have these beautiful pictures. But he's a perfect example of the hard left turn. Like, do I want to be a COO of a healthcare company? So now he owns a gallery. Okay, I probably should. Now he's earning a living in a whole different way. And he's smart. He could do something else, I'm sure. But like, he found this passion for photography that he never knew existed. And he's got a gallery, and he's making a living. He wrote it. He's got like a couple of coffee table books and some things like that. So, and he's very deep. Like, when he writes things, he writes these little things that go along with the pictures. And it's this introspectiveness, I guess I would say. He's introspective. And this is why I like people that are in recovery the most, because, I don't know, man. It's not usually like just surface level bullshit. Like, it's like, how you doing? Oh, I'm great. Like, how you really doing? Oh, well, you really want to know? Yeah. Okay. Well, fuck. So it's this realness, and that it comes down to connectedness as well. And that's all that we're really looking to do, is just connect with each other.
Oh, absolutely. And, I think for me, and I don't remember if I stole it, I want to say I got it from Greg Champion, who I believe but a big saying of mine, and hey, t-shirts coming soon, people, no outside solutions to inside problems. And I find through my recovery, like, isn't that kind of what we've done, and what you're saying, that introspection that we take, and really looking inward for, I think it's an acceptance and part of that submission, that it's like, yeah, everything I need is here within myself.
Yeah.
I don't have to leech from anyone else. And I find, like, I just love being around recovery people too, because so many radiate such like beautiful energy out. You don't feel like you're talking to an
No,
energy vampire anymore, where you're just like, oh,
because it's
there's
real, man. Because it's
yeah,
real. That's why. Because it's real. Yeah.
yeah.
And it's kind of, it comes back around to a little bit like the whole second chance,
Mm.
or to go spiritual, like like resurrection. Like, I was given a second chance, and now what am I going to do with it? Am I going to do something I don't like, I don't feel is contribute? It's not me. Am I going to continue to do? Am I going to do that, or what's my purpose? That's what I always have constantly asking. Like, what's my purpose? What am I supposed to do? What is this all about?
Yeah. What's my why?
Yeah.
Knockin' Doors Down by Carlos Vieira. Now available wherever you get audiobooks.
I wasn't done partying, and I didn't want the binge to end. I think I knew that when I finally got home, I'd have to face what I had done, and I wasn't ready to do that. Being responsible for my actions wasn't something I was looking forward to. I had abandoned my wife and baby, my family, and my business. I wanted to avoid the shame of returning to what I had left behind. Even though I was not yet going home, I wasn't sure I had enough resources to continue the binge.
Click the link in the podcast description to find out more. Well, let me ask you about it. You bring up that valid point, and I know so many people say this, but I've said it 3 times, so it's mine now. Like that those of us in recovery are some of the only people that have a second life, so to speak, live a second life. What was first life for Rob like before this journey?
Yeah. Okay. Wow. I don't think I've never been asked that. So, first life was, really, really functional, I would say. I grew up, I'm the last of, I'm the 8th of 8 children. So yeah. And so, my parents are now, passed away. My mother died at 96 and my dad 80 something. So they had long lives. And, so I grew up, and first of all, like, before I think with recovery today, all my life I've always been somebody that has questioned why and what, and why is the sky blue, and why is this and why is that, how do TVs work, all kinds of things like that. And I got a degree in computer engineering. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. It didn't come very easily to me at all. And then I worked in the tech sector, and I was in large mainframe computer system sales at a company in Seattle, and traveling around mostly like selling to banks and things like that, programming them and doing a bunch of different, kind of geek out kind of stuff. And in terms of like addiction story and stuff like that, like I would be functional, like I go to a bar or something like that. But one thing I do remember once was, I got completely, blasted out of my mind on the road, rented a car and on a business trip, and then, destroyed the car. And I should have died, we should have died, didn't really even get hurt. Matter of fact, I think the car rolled like 6 or 7 times. So there's just stupid things like that that happened. And then kind of one of the next chapters was I was an internet marketer. I always liked to communicate and to talk. And so that was kind of my background, was in marketing on the internet. I tell people I've been marketing on the internet really since there's been an internet, and had nothing to do with recovery whatsoever. And I got sober in about 1994. It was the spring of 1994. So I've got about 29 years. I was really the first person in my family to get sober. My brother, who you'll see is the advisor in recovery today, the guy was a multimillionaire when he was like 23. He's always been a big freaking baller, and my funding source, for a lot of my lifetime, college and stuff like that. And at one time, he had 13 different rehabs, and largest privately held rehab owner in California. And and I think the second largest privately held in the country. So no stock or anything like that. Just he owned all of them.
Yeah.
And I was kind of at a down time in my life. It was after the financial crisis of 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12. I did really good to the end of it. And then it all kind of started to really unwind really bad. And I went into a depression. I'd had a really, I kind of had a depression or two in my early 20s, but pretty bad. And so it was mixed together in finances, and it was mixed together in just, weight gain and loss of any kind of anything. It was just terrible. And I had this inspiration at some point. I was talking to him, and he was doing very, very, very well. And so it was kind of like I was down and he was up. And so he said, "Hey, why don't you we're opening another rehab. Why don't you build the website?" That's how this happened. It was in 2012, I think, or late 2012. So I said, okay. So for my big brother, I'm going to build a badass website. I wrote all the copy. I really knew nothing about like addictions, in terms of copy. And so I put it all together, and then, and he loved it. And I did that. And then for a little while, and then the inspiration for the magazine came. So this is kind of like what it was before, and then kind of going into what it's become. And so I had this idea like, hey, you spend all this money on traffic to come to your website, but they just bounce off. Like you don't have anything. There's no opt-in list. You can't follow up with anybody at all. And so that was where the inspiration for the magazine came. And the original issues of the magazine, like we would never run any ads. It was all just, he paid for all of it, subsidized the whole thing. And the only ad that we would ever run in there was for his place. And there was no other rehabs or anything like that. So since then, several years ago, he's now sold off most all of them. And in the meantime, we just had so many things would happen that we'd turn away in terms of like, hey, I want to be in the magazine. No, you're a rehab. You're like not going to be in. But other ones were like things that didn't overlap, like it was gambling or it was porn or was eating disorders or teens or some things like that. And so those people we did, obviously bring in, and that's kind of the genesis of what it was. So my background before, technology sales originally, and then I've been an entrepreneur for, I don't know, 23 years, at least 25 years, I would probably say. And marketing and communication is like what I've always really enjoyed. But I have never found anything that has the kind of meaning that recovery has. So like the niche that I had worked in before, in terms of writing copy and messaging and communication, and I would write movie scripts and things for like cartoon movies and promotion and things like that, affiliate marketing. It was usually for like the make money kind of niche. Like, hey, you can make a bunch of money and play golf all the time, and you can do, take a nap, and you can do all this kind of stuff while you're making money. And it's just bullshitness. I mean, it's just bullshitness. I like the whole idea of making a lot of money, but like we're in this tech context, we're talking about saving lives, and people are dying. And so, at any rate, that's kind of probably too much of the story, but it's, that's kind of how my story has progressed from who I kind of was to who I am. And one of the reasons why I love this is because I feel really good about it. Like somebody somewhere is going to maybe hear something that I think is some dumbass shit I say. And they're going to be like, fuck, I believe that guy. Like, I like that guy. Like, that makes sense. Yeah. And then it helps them to change, man. Like everybody's destiny is one sentence. You just can say, what do they say? Stevie Wonder's teacher in grade school said, you have really good ears. You have a really good ear. And it's like a pool ball, that sends you on a different trajectory, a ricochet to somewhere else. And it's like, I became Stevie Wonder. Would he still be in? Maybe, but like somebody recognized something in him. And I just feel like you probably do that by accident all the time. So why not try to do it intentionally?
Absolutely. And I think that, hey, so many of us, just want to be known, seen, heard, and so on. And I know you get this too, but when somebody sends me like a direct message or an email, hey, thanks for what you do, I wanted to relapse, but I stumbled on your podcast and I ended up listening for the next 6 hours and completely forgot that I wanted to drink, pop a pill, whatever it is, or
Yep.
things like that, or like for you, I mean, we've had some crossover with some guests, but I mean, like I love Sugar Ray Leonard. I also went through some sexual abuse. Hopefully, we'll speak to him someday. But when he said and shared that vulnerability about going through that, it's like, wow, wait, I can do this too. And I can be open and honest. And I don't have to feel emasculated or any of this other stuff.
Right.
We get to really lay it out there. I mean, how, like, okay, life well served. Great. I got to
Exactly.
keep doing this.
Yeah.
But you brought up something interesting too. First in your family to get sober. So this was a lineage thing.
Yeah, I was the first of my family, and my dad was probably he was a gambler, I remember. And so there was that, but there was not any. I didn't come from really a broken home. Like I said, my father, maybe pre-roll, my father was a retired colonel from the Air Force. He had been a base commander too, an Air Force base commander. And so, and then I think he sort of sold insurance for a while. And after, he retired about the time I was born. So it wasn't like he ever went to Gamblers Anonymous or anything like that. My sister, the youngest of my sisters, so there's 4 boys and 4 girls. And the youngest girl, her name's Heather. And my brother did set up the Heather K. Hannley Foundation. I remember when I was about 10 years old, she was a heroin addict. So I'll be 58 in a few weeks here. So 1965 would have been around the 70s, and they had hippies back then. And so heroin was like popular back in the 70s. Okay. So there was a period where heroin was not popular, and the hippies would sit around and they'd shoot up. So I remember her, she was probably 18 or something like that. I was probably 10, and my sister was a heroin addict. And then my brother grew up like in the disco, like John Travolta, Saturday Night Fever kind of era, and he so he's just partying all the time. I got to say, my brother was really, really, really fun. After when I became enough of an adult where I wasn't just a little punk kid that he beat up on. Oh God, he was fun. He was so fun to party with. He always had tons of money, and he just has this personality, like everybody wants to be around him, like shit doesn't happen until he's there. Still to this day is how he is. So but I was the first one in my family to get sober, and I got hassled for it quite a bit.
How did you deal with that? I mean, that so many people, and this, Rob, I also work at a nonprofit, Parents and Addicts in Need. And, we talk to a lot of younger people that are really faced with this. Or when I go into classrooms here locally, I prefer that over big auditoriums because I can get, some dialogue going with these kids. But how did you personally face that? Because that's tough. I got a lot of shit too. I got it in relationships where it was like, you're not any fun anymore. Okay, great. So you want me to be there.
I had radically changed everything in my life at the time. And I was raised Catholic, but I wasn't spiritual at all. I made a conscious decision to become Christian. And from that point on, I started reading my Bible. I got into personal development. And I started this is again why I say, the people that are in recovery, I like more than anybody because they're introspective. So I just started this deep personal journey about what is it that I want? What do I want to be? What is possible? What is this all about? All this kind of stuff. And so, although I remember my oldest brother thinking, what did you quit? You quit drinking? What you can't even have a glass of wine? I was like, yeah, man, I don't drink. I'm not a drinker. So that's kind of how I overcame it. Is I'm just thinking I'm not the same guy, man. I go to church, I'm young and I'm single. I go to church. I read my Bible. I know might not be cool to you. This is what I would think. I'm just like, fuck, whatever, man. You're doing your life, man. I'm doing my life, and we'll see who. And the youngest always got a little chip on their shoulder. We'll see who has a better life. I'm going to have the best one I can have. mine. And so I just kind of continued. I continued on, and to where I would distance myself from those. I was old enough that it was like I lived with my brother and like that. I was already on my way. And so I just distanced myself from anybody that was not, in line with anything that I wanted to do. And I'm going where I'm going. And if you're not, that's cool. And if you're that kind of person, good for you. I'm probably not going to hang out with you, is what I would think. I just didn't have any time. So a lot of goals and visions and dreams and things like that. Very intentional as a young man into changing myself. And if you're not on board with changing, what I'm changing myself. I'm not staying here. And good for you, man. But I'm kind of down the road. And that's how I looked at everything.
And that's a really tough process, I think. I don't know. You tell me. I find that most people in recovery generally are people. We enjoy the connectivity. I mean, it really is the opposite of addiction when we get that community. But so many of us had that social lubricant in one way, shape, or form that was an easy bond connection or took away inhibitions. Yeah, it's a real challenge, especially with some newcomers, to say you're going to have to really set boundaries. And even some people that you care about, you're going to have to cut off or, hey, you over there, me over here, there is a separation. Yeah. I mean, I was lucky. A lot of people, Rob, just went the fuck away. Like, oh, you don't drink anymore? Bye. It's like, oh, thank you. Okay. Yeah. I know who you are.
Yeah, exactly. So there's some things I think that you would need to do. Like if I was giving advice to somebody and they worked in a kitchen, now maybe not their occupation, and they went to the Cordon Bleu and they've invested tons and tons of years, or maybe they're a waiter, okay, or a bartender, something like that, okay. Anybody that's worked in restaurants, bars, they know people that work in restaurants and bars party, okay. It's very stressful. And then when it's done, or even what's happening. I probably tell somebody like, you might want to look at kind of changing careers, man. Cause I don't think it's all by association. You become like those that you associate with. And so, I mean, my advice to anybody would be just you find those that are aligned with you and with what you want to do. And everybody else kind of you don't have to tell them, hey, man, I can't see you anymore. I don't think. All of the people, just like what you said with you, they all lost interest in me. I was always too busy to be doing something else. I always seemed to have different plans for, whenever it was. I just was not available that much. And fortunately, the people that knew me before, like when I was, I'd love to go to bars and I'd buy drinks for everybody and everything like that. The people that knew me then, they were cool, and most of them just respected it and were like, "Hey, that's really cool." When I told, I got this much sober, or when did you drink last? I was like, "Oh, it's been a year," and they're like, "Wow, how did you?" So it wasn't that difficult. They just fell away, man. They just fell away. That was really what it was. They just the ones that were not serving me just fell away.
While you're checking Knockin' Doorz Down out, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you get a lot out of this podcast, share with a friend. And don't forget the archive of interviews we have. Bam Margera, Brandon Novak, Kat Von D, Charlie Sheen, Edward Furlong, Kelly Osborne. The list goes on and on of amazing guests that have been on the podcast, sharing how they have found purposeful lives. Speaking of purpose, how about a lifestyle brand with purpose? 5150 LTM. That's right. Not only is it a lifestyle brand that can fit whatever it is you're trying to achieve in life, but they give back to the community. And you, the listener of Knockin' Doorz Down, get 20% off every time you shop at 5150 LTM. All you have to do is use the code KDD20 at checkout and get 20% off. And how does 5150 give back to the community? Portions of the sales benefit the Carlos Vieira Foundation. Their 3 amazing programs, the Race to End the Stigma, the Race for Autism, and the Race to be Drug-Free. More on the Carlos Vieira Foundation, go to carlosvieirafoundation.org. You brought up your a couple of phases of depression. And one of the things that I find really valuable that you and the staff do with Recovery Today magazine is that mental health component is really there. I've encouraged a few people that, maybe substance abuse or quote unquote addiction isn't necessarily a thing, but some of these mental health shows, like, hey, check it out. I mean, here's the link. You subscribe. It's easy, Was that a conscious effort that you really wanted to pull that component of mental health into it?
Yeah, 100%. So in fact, it was probably almost the central component, as a matter of fact. So if I look at it from the genesis of like me as the kind of the starting this is in terms of my idea and what it would look like, what the content was going to be, is early on. I don't know whether it was some platform we were setting up or there was something that was kind of necessitated, like, well, what is it? Okay. Or even the elevators, we talk in sales, like the elevator speech, like, what is it? There has to be something that's actually quick and kind of easy. And so I thought very intentionally about, well, what is it? Like, what's the very first thing that we would say that Recovery Today is? And when the magazine had started, as I mentioned, it started at a time of kind of crisis in my life. I was depressed, thank God that I had a brother that was there for me and that gave me something that I could do. I already had these skills, but, and so I started thinking about transformation. Okay. So this is a little bit kind of heavy, but like, just to give it the credit that's due, is I'm fat I want to be fit. I'm poor. I want to be prosperous. I'm this, I want to be transformation of any kind. And I started to realize, because I was hopeless as being depressed, I was hopeless. Okay. I started realizing the first and primary ingredient to any kind of transformation is hope. What do I need the most of right now? I need hope. Like, I just feel like everything is wrong. I need hope. I need hope. I need hope. And so then I kind of had this, then I realized, I was like, wow, man, before you could go to the gym and get in shape, before you could do this, before you could do that, before you could do anything, you have to have this idea, this hope that, like, if I just do A, B, and C, maybe, just maybe, it could be better. So that was where the whole very intentional part of Recovery Today is. Recovery Today is a magazine of hope, period. And then even more so, to punctuate it, is everything that we do revolves around hope. Every piece of content, every interview, everything that we do, we're dealing with dark subject matter. My kid died, my this, whatever. I mean, we're dealing with life and death. But if you're in Recovery Today, there's some kind of strong uptick of hope. What did you do with that? How did it happen? What did you what transformed? So yeah, so very intentionally, I've always resonated very, very strongly, particularly with depression, anxiety, fear, and regret. In truth, for me, not drinking, staying sober, not doing stuff, is not really even a thing for me. After 29 years, like, it hasn't been for a long, long time. It's not like thinking, God, I need to go get a freaking beer. I wish I could get a drink. I wish I could do, such and such. If only, I need to call my spot. That's not even a thing for me. Well, really what the thing has been is like, why am I feeling blue right now? Like, why do I feel anxious? What do I feel something kind of in my spirit right now? Like, what's going on? And then I medicate, if you will, mostly by going to the gym and releasing endorphins or something like that. And so, yes, there's a very strong component to mental health, specifically around depression, around anxiety, around fear, and there'll probably be even more as we go along. I want to focus on like procrastination as an addiction. And fear as an addiction. Or I have friends that they just create drama. I think that we feed on and are addicted to drama and like these salacious kind of things. And so these are the kind of things I very intentionally want to incorporate and bring into and amplify within Recovery Today.
Yeah, well, and I think that you nailed some things that are so incredibly valuable. I know for me, it was interesting, Rob, I got the chemicals out of the way. And then realizing underneath from my childhood trauma, some of it's sexual abuse and things like that, was like, whoa, I'm a sex and love addict. I couldn't quit toxic relationships. That was my ultimate thing. And then what happens in those? You give somebody else the power to lift you up and tear you down. Well, when you're down, what do you want to do? You don't want to feel any of that. So then you go drink or use or whatever, and I think so many people, I know that, there's so many isms to addiction, right? We have so many isms just as people. And I think the more we can understand the brain, the release of chemicals, things like you said, drama. I know people that they seem to always have to have at least one enemy in their life, no matter what. They seem to always have to be in a fucking fight with someone.
Yeah.
And it's not healthy conflict, So it's I'm glad you're going to explore that. I know that's going to be really helpful to a lot of people. It's going to be helpful to me because I really picked up a lot from the areas of mental health, someone that struggles with anxiety, depression and things like that. And
I've had agoraphobia.
Oh, really?
All the way back to not now, but like in college, I discovered I went to see a therapist. I was terrified to see a therapist because I figured it was going to screw my whole life over. Everybody was going to know I saw a therapist, but I had agoraphobia, which is traditionally like you're leaving the house, right? Like that's what agoraphobia generally is. For me, and maybe this is helpful to somebody at all, there was first fear and there was second fear. And so the first fear was like just a regular kind of something that you might see something unexpected and would release a little bit of adrenaline, but your nerves are so bombarded all the time. And so you kind of tend to overreact. And the second fear was always like, I'm going to wig out and lose my shit. Like in I'm going to have to be carried off, like I'm going to be in some public meeting or some place and they're going to go like, oh, did you ever hear what happened to Rock Hannley? Oh, yeah, that's the guy that like lost his shit at the basketball game. Oh yeah, I heard about that. So the second fear was like, oh God, please don't let me like lose my shit right now. Like, and so it was very much performance based all the time. Like, how am I going to look? And I was never like, I could never like relax, like, and just these constant feedback loops in my brain all the time. So part of it might have been actually just being a younger kind of person, but I was able to reframe it and give myself some tools to decompress off of these kind of things. So whether or not it's something that's hereditary, or I think that it's a matter of just the perspective that we look at things. Yeah, man, I'm very, very, very passionate about that.
Yeah. Well, and how do so I've got two teenagers, and you have two kids, three kids?
Two. We've got two. Good memory. My oldest is 21, and we got 21 and 19, boy and girl.
How did you kind of from a father standpoint tackle some of these issues? Because it's truth
and honesty.
Yeah, because I can speak. It's easier for whatever reason. I can speak to a class of kids easier than sometimes the conversation with my own. So this is selfish. Why I'm asking you.
Well, first of all, thanks for what a great entry, because that's one of my favorite conversations and topics. And obviously, anybody that ever talked to me would know, like, damn, that guy could talk. My father could talk to. And one of the things I always thought about with kids is kind of a joke, is like, you're a freaking captive audience. And that's how I was with a kid, with my dad. And I think my dad was a great dad, but I think that I bring much more wisdom and insight to the life of my children than my own father did. And a lot of it is just the age that we live in. So, one of the lines that I have always used forever with my kids is like, hey man, like especially the older one, whatever the age was, it's like, look, dude, you're 8 or you're 9 or whatever. And the truth is, like, I've been 9, I've known 9-year-olds, but I've never been a father to a 9-year-old. So like, I'm doing the very best that I can do here. And so, I'm going to make mistakes. And so, although he probably couldn't process that at 9 or 10, it gave me, in my mind, margin to say, like, look, I'm just, this is something that's new to me, man. I've never been a dad before. I'm trying. And so some of the things were, I would say, I'm sorry. So if I felt like I made a mistake later or something like that, I'd go back and I'd be like, man, I kind of blew that, man. Like, I'm sorry about that, dude. Like, I'm doing my best over here. And the main thing, the main kind of deal with my kids is to know I have your best interest at heart. And I've had many, many, many conversations, mostly with my son, who was very hard-headed, and about like, look, man, like I would actually like really take a bullet for you. Okay. I meet a lot of people, like a lot of people, but I'd be a very, very short list of people of who I would actually take a bullet for. You're one of them. Ever since you were born, like a few minutes after you're born, I would have died for you. So I only want the very best for you. And I'm going to help you figure things out as best you can. Ultimately, everything that you do in life is going to be a decision that you will make. He had a rough time at one time when he was a teenager. And I remember saying, like, look, man, you're either going to end up, on the streets, you're going to end up in jail, you're going to end up dead. And I would be very, very, very sad if any of those things happened. Like I would remember that for the rest of my life. But mark my words, like that would be your decision. And I am determined, even if something as tragic and horrible like that would happen, I am going to live my life. And I will always love you. It's not a condition. I'm not proud, and then straight up, I'm not proud of you right now. Like you're fucking up, like, you're not doing esteemable shit. It's not who you are, man. But there's part of this whole, like I would die for you, but at the same time, I'm also a sovereign unto myself, like I only get one shot at my life too. So I don't know if that kind of might help anybody at all, but like I love talking about, and my kids have turned out, good. They're good kids. So I love talking about that. That's a couple of my favorite things to talk about.
No, thank you. That's incredibly helpful. I've definitely had some of those scenarios, and I see it, and I'm not here to like pick on anyone, but I sometimes I think that parents forget where they end and their child begins, and where their child begins and they end, because at the end of the day, they're just our gift to give out to the world. And that's sorry, I even got a little teary-eyed when you were talking, because I could like feel those things and some of those very similar times and emotions.
It's spiritual, man. That's because it's spiritual, and it's how we were created to be. That's why. And I'll tell you one more in terms of the whole thing about like dying is I remember, so it was my son. I didn't have quite this experience with my daughter because now I had already been a parent. Okay. They were born a couple years apart. And I remember, my son was born as a long, long, long labor for my poor wife. And he was born like early in the mornings, 5 or 6 in the morning. We were exhausted. It was like 20 something hours for my wife, and I was looking at him. He was like on the table, whatever. And I was looking down on him, and I was like, oh God, like, he's got the stuff on him and all that. And I was like, oh man, like, dude, like all of a sudden I had this, I'm like, wow, I just like had this overwhelming, as exhausted as I was, I had this overwhelming sense of love. And I was like, whoa, like, that's kind of weird, man. Like, I mean, where did this even come? It wasn't like somebody said, do you love your son? Like I was just looking at him, and then I was freaking overwhelmed. And being kind of the engineer part of my mind, I always have to quantify. And I'm like, well, how much actually, this is odd. How much do I actually love you? And then that was when I thought I would die for you right now. And then I thought, damn, that's really weird. Like I've only met this person. I've only seen him for a minute, and I would give my life for him. And I'm like, that is just really, really weird. I think it's also one of the reasons why females process like the loss of a child or a stillborn or something so much more, is because they're already physically, probably spiritually connected to them, whereas I had just had this one experience. So I just think that this is how we're wired, man. And the depth is, and it also, it gave me an entirely fresh and new perspective on my relationship with God. So this leads me into things like people thinking like, should you be rich? Should you be poor? Should you be this? Should you be that? I always look at it as like God, my father, and what is it that I would want for my kid? So would you want your kid? Is it better, that you're more holy, or you're going to please your father more if you're poor, if you're meek? Do you need to flog yourself? Do you need to self-incriminate yourself and things like that? Do you have the kind of father that's like, oh God, like I know I'm really not worthy to get to get any kind of anything, and like I'm so sorry. If it's your will to give me some sneakers, fucking please, thou art, give me this kind of thing. Like, your kids come to you freely, and so everything that I've had, it transformed, being a father transformed my whole perspective with God. Like, I just always think like, well, what would I want? Like, would I want my kid to be rich or poor? Well, I don't want to be an asshole, number one. Okay. But given that, not given, I would want him to be some benevolent rich than a benevolent poor. Okay. I would want him to be, I want him to prosper and kind of in every way. So anyhow, I don't know how I went on that whole segment. I took a little bit of the liberty there, but that's kind of my thought process on children and spirituality and stuff like that.
No, please. I love having these conversations, Rob. I don't always get to get into this with everyone. And, I've definitely put more into my spirituality because the question was put to me, are you a human being having a spiritual experience, or are you a spiritual being having a human experience? And, I said the latter at the first part, and then it dawned on me, this same person, a mutual friend of ours, that I've been working with, Mike Diamond, he went, well, why would you fucking say that? You're talking like you get that body of yours forever. And I was like, wow, you're right. Everything's for rent. This body, my time.
I'll give you one even further that's pretty heavy that I have you use the word experience, but I really think about it now in the actual context of this. I was listening to some podcast a few months ago, and the guy was actually, so are we human? Are we a human being with a spirit, or we're a spirit in a human body, having this experience? And the guy was saying, because I always wonder, like, what's consciousness? Like, what actually is this? And he suggested that we are actually, because there's even the whole thing like this is all a simulation. We're in a fucking video game right now. Like, no, we're not in a video game. How would you know? How would you know that this isn't like Westworld? If we were just activated this morning, you actually wouldn't really know. So anyhow, the perspective was of who we are actually not here. All of the physical, it's like living. It's very, very, very. Matrix is one of my favorite movies, and it's because it's the whole idea of what is real, and what's experienced. So we think we're here, but in actuality, we are this infinite beings. Okay, I don't mean aliens. We're some kind of infinite spiritual being that's somewhere else. Okay, in a different dimension or heaven or whatever you want to say. We're somewhere else, and we're kind of beamed in and having this experience, right? And so now I try to look at everything like, well, that's just an experience. Everything is to have an experience. I was listening to a podcast this morning, it's kind of like that a little bit about having an experience, talk about our imagination. And so we can actually even say like, I think I would like the experience of this. And the more we think about it, maybe I was going to say muse on it, but the more that we kind of bring these things over and over and think, yeah, this would be an experience. I would like to have this experience. We are creative beings when we bring this into being, and we bring this in. So I know this is kind of hippie-ish.
No,
it's just kind of where I've kind of been a little bit, and what I'm kind of been thinking about a lot lately. Like, I think that we are. I'm a crypto enthusiast. I shared this with my breathwork coach, and so if you don't know crypto, that you'll be completely lost. If you know anything about crypto, you'll get it. So I'll go a little bit further. I'm a Christian. So there's a Christian verse that says, Jesus or God said, I'm the vine and you're the branch. Okay. So I get it. Like, I'm little, but you're big, but I'm still part of you. Okay. And then another verse is like, I am created in God's image and likeness. So how old are your kids?
13, 14.
So I bet you if I went, not ever seeing your kids, to their soccer game or whatever, and I had a chance to look at all of the kids together, okay, whatever it would be, I would be able to look them over, and especially if I knew you better, right? And I'd be able to go, hey, that's Jason's kid. I heard it says he says talks the same, kind of looks the same, kind of walks the same. That's definitely his kid. So that is actually in his image and likeness. So if anybody thinking like, well, I don't know what God looks like. Well, guess what? He looks like you. He looks like me. Looks like in image and in likeness. Okay. So in the blockchain kind of thing is kind of interesting, right? So the blockchain thing is interesting because the blockchain and all of the crypto kind of stuff is they're independent nodes. It's called it's called decentralized. And so I am not any greater or better than you. We're just different individuals that are all part of this chain, all part of this, I am the branch and you are the vine. And then what is our purpose? I think our purpose is to actually express love. I think that's really what everything is all about, is that we are supposed to create love. We're supposed to transfer love to other people. We're supposed to validate love in terms of like, oh yeah, I recognize that's love, and witness it and things like that. And I think that's really the essence of everything. So now I know I've probably gone really, really deep into about this, in some of my letters, but that's what I think. I think that we are having this experience here on Earth, and we are really infinite beings. That's what I believe.
Yeah. I've never thought of it that way. We've had a wonderful, the sermons this year, it's ironically at the church I go to been called Under the Influence. What are you under the influence of? And the thing that really stuck with me the most, and in sitting and kind of, I get into rumination. Unfortunately, I can get into that fucking negative self-talk and all those things that we do. And it was the pastor, and he had said, how much are your actions aligned with what you think would be loving from God? And I was like, I would never put anybody down the way I do in my own head. I'm going to start doing more work to stop that shit today. Because every time I do that, then I go back to the things you were talking about earlier, the procrastination, the anxiety rises, the depression rises, the negative, all these things.
Yeah, but then you have this self-talk like, oh, fuck, man, I'm such a piece of shit. I'm such a. Would you tell your kid that? If your kid messed up, would you be like, dude, you're a piece of shit. Like, you never could follow through on anything. Like, what's wrong with your ass, Like, these are the thoughts that go through our own mind. I can never do anything. Like, I'm just such a thought. Talk to yourself like you would talk to your kids. You're going to talk to your kids like that? Like, you need to think of your ego, okay? Because that's what we want to build in a healthy way. Think of it like a child. You wouldn't go off on them. Shouldn't. If you should apologize. And you can apologize to yourself a little bit. Love each other. Love your neighbor as yourself. But the problem is, most people don't love themselves, and so they are loving their neighbor like themselves because they don't like themselves, and so they don't treat anybody else nice either.
Yeah, way too often.
So anyhow, that's kind of, like I said, I'm way, way, way out in the heavy deep end here, but.
No, I like it. No, Rob, I don't get too many people that want to get out in this. I enjoy this kind of conversation.
I think it's what it's about, man.
I agree. And as the older I get and the more I'm, losing people or whatever it is, that's the more I embrace that, really. And I don't know if find comfort is all right. I guess it helps enhance purpose, and I don't waste time like I used to. I look at time differently. So, anywho, all right, Rob, I shift gears here. We jump into fun random questions. Are you ready, good sir?
Yeah, bring it, man.
All right. Man, I'm curious what you would have. Any pet peeves?
Stupid people.
Yeah.
I don't like stupid people. Yeah. If I get bad service or something like that, or a business owner, sometimes I will tell business owners later, or I'll post, I don't do business with stupid people. So I don't care what color you are, religion you are. I'm highly prejudiced to stupid people. I do not like stupid people. I don't like stupid drivers. I don't like stupid
Oh,
people.
yeah. Oh, drivers has been the worst lately. Like nobody remembers proper lane changing
Yeah.
procedures
I
and
don't like tailgaters. That's a pet peeve. That pisses me off too.
oh, right. Yeah, I don't know about you. You're in Florida now, right?
Bad tailgaters, man. It's freaking
Uh,
ridiculous here. It's so ridiculous.
yeah, I'm in Central California, but lately, like the worst tailgaters have become the Tesla drivers, and it's like, what the like? Come on, you could have dinner with any one person, living or not. Who would they be?
That's an easy one. I would probably have, I mean, the easy layup on that one is I would, of course, have dinner like with Jesus,
Man,
like, how would you not choose that? I don't know who my second pick would be. I don't know, man. Maybe like I like old time authors like Orson Swett Martin. I
oh
love Tony
yeah,
Robbins. I'd love to have dinner with Tony Robbins. I think that'd be kick ass. Maybe I'll do
wow.
that someday. Maybe I'll set that as an intention. He's alive. So
Wow, Orson Swett Martin. That is, I have not heard anybody else bring that author up
you actually
ever.
know Orson Swett Martin? I'm surprised you do. Wow.
Yes, a funny story. You want to know how I got turned
Yeah.
on to him? The professional wrestler, the Ultimate Warrior.
Really?
Yes, he got really into after he retired from wrestling into personal development and all these things. And I had emailed him and I said, I'm getting really interested in this. I told him things that I went through. It really left me kind of emasculated. I don't have much confidence. And he went, read Orson Swett Martin. I was like, really? Okay. I'll give
He's
it a
the
shot.
OG, man, and he writes if you like writing at all, like it's got this kind of it's not poetic, but it's kind of got this poetic prose, I think is the word. Like it's like eating a meal. It just when you're hearing it in your mind, it just sounds like good. So I would big shout out for a book called Every Man a King, by Marden, Marden. Also another one called Pushing to the Front. This guy was the original OG. He was like 1870 to like 1915 or something like that. He was an OG. Marden was.
Yeah. All right. They here I like this one. They so does some company decides to license your life story for a movie, who would you want to play adult you and what genre would it be?
Okay. Well, I always joke around with my wife that I'm Brad Pitts or something like that. I always tease her that I'm a supermodel, that like I don't know what all the other supermodels doing right now. So I don't know who would I license to be? Probably that's like the first thing that would pop up to be like Brad Pitt or something like that, I suppose. So what was the other part of the question?
What genre?
What genre? It would have to be some kind of drama, I suppose, like it's not like it's action hero stuff at this point in my life, but it would have to be some kind of drama. Yeah.
Yeah. I always figured mine would be a pretty good dark comedy. There's some
Dark comedy. How funny, man. That is interesting. I like that.
well, I
That's,
mean,
that's a
you're
great question, by the way. I like that.
yeah, you're a guy that's been in the rooms. When we have people that aren't in recovery, and sometimes our sense of humor, they don't get it at all.
No.
They're like, oh, good God, okay. All right, last one before I leave you with the final thoughts. You're stranded on a deserted island. You have one music artist's greatest hits and one movie. What are they?
Oh, wow. The movie part is easy. The movie I would probably choose Braveheart. I love Braveheart. And yeah, I love Braveheart. And then I would say the music artist. I like Triumph or I like Rush. And the only reason I wouldn't even say Rush is because I've just burned it over like decades. So, but I like three-man bands from Canada. So one music artist would probably be, I would listen to, I would probably, yeah, I'd probably fill up my MP3s with Triumph, I think.
Right on. Rob, this has been a pleasure to finally connect with you in this way, and
Yeah,
hopefully
man.
we get to do it down the line. But I like to leave you with the last thoughts. People that are out there struggling, or maybe they have a loved one that has struggled, and anything you'd want to drop.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I really enjoy it. As you can tell, I love to talk about, like I said, the weightier matters of life. Big shout out to you and to, everything that you're doing and knocking doors down. And the people that you're connecting with, because there's more people that need help than there is people that are saying, I'd like to be helpful. And so any kind of what I would say to anybody that is either in recovery, thinking that maybe I need to be, maybe somebody sent this, or you love somebody, which is actually pretty much everybody, is that there's always hope. There honestly is always hope. And you can take an inventory of the good things that are happening in your life. If you think that there's nothing or you're completely broke, look around, and it sounds silly, but you can kind of see all the abundance that's around you. There is opportunities. And I do really believe that through just sheer grit and determination and hanging in there, that if you can just tread water long enough, okay, when the time you're thinking, God, I'm choking, I'm swallowing, if you can just not drown, okay, your time will come, and there'll be something that will naturally lift you up. There will be an opportunity. There will be somebody will enter your life. In the meantime, it is your job to prepare yourself. And so do whatever that you can do to be the kind of person that's going to be easily lifted. Get into personal development. Start listening to fucking read Doorz and Schlepp Martin, number one, and do any of these kind of things. And then if you'd like to connect with us at Recovery Today, so that's kind of everything that I've been is kind of espousing right now is the theme, but it's not just me. There's other people and there's cool therapists and different stuff like that, and it's just very real type of stuff that's in there.
This is the Knockin' Doorz Down podcast, featuring celebrities, experts, and everyday people who have overcome adversities, including addiction, mental health, and trauma, to live purposeful lives. And that's what Knockin' Doorz Down is all about.